Couples of Reddit, what's the most unromantic thing that's happened between the two of you that actually is a stronger indication of love than others might think? She died 10 years ago. I have not dated since. But while we were married she vomited the whole time. She had serious morning sickness that lasted all day for both pregnancies. For 9 months. Then she had cancer and chemo. So more vomiting. She vomited almost every day we were married. But I always held her hair. I had a severe attack of gastroenteritis. It was coming out of both ends. So I'm lying in bed and I suddenly have to vomit, so I try to run to the bathroom. I fail and proceed to vomit and poop all over the floor. He cleans me, the floor and the bathroom up, tucks me back into bed with some water, gives me a kiss and strokes my greasy and tangled head till I fall asleep. Most unromantic scenario ever, but he was there to help me get through it despite how gross it was. When I tried to apologize for him having to do all that, he said, "It's fine sweetie. I love you and I know if the roles were reversed you'd do the same. And I would too." I had MRSA and my wound had to be packed with silver nitrate and wound tape to assure it didn't close over before healing. That meant my relatively new boyfriend was 2x daily putting me in agonizing pain and first pulling blood and pus soaked packing material out of a hole in my arm. He was then ruthlessly shoving clean materials back in. I knew then he was the one. We've been happily married over 10 years now. My wife was so sick. Like could barely stand sick. She crawled to the toilet and was rolling and groaning from stomach pain. She's never been able to make herself vomit on command. I got her over the toilet, had her take a few deep breaths, and jammed my fingers down her throat. With warning and permission, she demon spewed all over my hand in the toilet. Pretty chunky and sticky, but she felt so much better. I have a now 12-year-old daughter who is not biologically his. However, she calls him dad now and he always refers to her as his daughter. When she was about 10 he'd been moved and about 6 months we were settling into things as a family. I was working and they were home hanging out and she got her first period. I had briefly had a couple small discussions, enough that she knew what was happening, but was pretty unsure what to do. So he handed her some toilet paper, told her the basic girl trick of putting it in her underwear and took her to the store. He helped her pick out some pads, detoured to the ice cream, chocolate, chips and bakery section and picked up Junior Advil just in case. They settled in on the sofa. He explained the basics of how to use it, showed her a quick YouTube video, made up a hot water bottle for her, popped her dirty clothes on to soak, and they snuggled and she talked about it and they googled answers if he didn't have them. I came home to them having a nap on the sofa looking like a slumber party exploded and a happy child. Probably one of the moments I've loved him the most. Holy crap, I went to bed and this blew up. I was expecting it to get buried with how busy the thread already was. I'll try to respond to everyone. My husband's family lived across the country and used to send us boxes of their almost new, good quality clothes that they no longer wore. The men clothes were great for hubby and sons, but the female clothes were always a bit too small as I had gained a lot of weight since they had seen me last. My husband always felt so bad for me. Then one time, my hubby lifted up a pair of pants out of the box and said happily, "These will fit you. They're huge." I still remember the look of horror that passed over his face once he'd realized what he said. But I loved the fact that he was happy for me getting a new pair of pants. When I was first DX with Crohn's disease, my so would have to carry me to the toilet and I would scream and cry from the pain of it while he kneeled in front of me holding me while I cried. I had an awful stomach bug. I dry heaved so hard I fainted and fell out of bed. When my husband came upstairs to check out the sound of me hitting the floor, he found me puking into a trash can while I ate myself. He gathered up the sheets I pooped on, helped me to the bathroom to clean up and put clean sheets on our bed. He then took care of the sheets and never mentioned it again. When my husband and I first married, I had a surgery to remove a tumor from my chest. The surgery site ended up infected, and for about 3 months he would have to stuff the site with gauze so we could allow it to heal from the inside out. Was so disgusting. I could not do it myself because it was so painful. He was always so amazing about changing the dressing around it, and I really think it cemented the whole mentality of us versus the world thinking. We just celebrated our 11-year anniversary, and are going strong. The second night we had overnight relations, he started at 3 AM while we were fast asleep. Nothing like changing the sheets at 3 AM. We're married now. We just moved in together in 2015. That summer some weird tummy bug was going around and I got it. We were watching a movie when unexpectedly my stomach just gave one big churn, and before I could get up to run to the bathroom, I puked and shat myself at the same time. My stomach cramps were so unbearable that I could hardly lift my head up, but he carried me in all my mess, helped me to shower, cleaned up my disgusting mess and nursed me back to health. Every time I needed to go to the bathroom, he'd carry me, rub my back, hold out the bucket, etc. I was mortified, but to him it was normal and he knows I'd do the same for him. My husband acted as the lone pallbearer for our newborn son's funeral. I carried him for nearly his whole life and my husband carried him to his final rest. My wife was battling cancer and couldn't poop from all the medication she was given, so I had to give her a suppository. Once it took effect, I had to stay in the bathroom and watch her because she thought she might pass out. True love. I grew up with my grandparents BC. Both my parents had to work various jobs simultaneously, so my grandfather was my world. I took care of him during his last 5 years. When he became bedridden, I tried to visit him as often as I could. He lived with an elderly aunt who fed him, but needed me to bathe him and, eventually, change his diapers and so on. Early in our relationship, my now wife would come over sometimes. One time I got to his house and found his fridge full and him watching TV, eating a bowl of ice cream. My wife had gone a few hours before me without telling me. 6 months later I proposed. I got blackout drunk, puked all over my then boyfriend, now husband, restroom and bedroom, woke up to fresh clothes. He explained everything that happened after me begging him to tell me. Apparently, I started trying to exorcise demons out of him and just projectile vomited everywhere. He managed to get me drink some water, bathe me, get me to bed, and then deep clean the room and restroom. I was so embarrassed after. The only memory I have of that night is his cat looking at me with concern and judgment. Edit. Wow. This is my top comment. Ducking a. Edit 2. Here's the cat tax, you filthy animals. I recently had a second heart catheterization to check my heart for blockages. Thankfully there were none. Unfortunately this time they needed to go through my femoral artery in my groin and I needed to remain on bed rest for about 4 hours after the procedure. I had not eaten all day in preparation for the surgery, so when I got out I was famished. The nurse brought me hospital dinner, but I could not sit upright to feed myself. My lovely wife of 10 years, who has been a solid rock for me through this ordeal, was excited at the opportunity to feed me. I'm only 32 years old, so being in this predicament and being unable to feed myself was rather humbling. She happily cut my roast beef and potatoes and fed me a bite at a time. You could just tell that she loved being able to serve me in this way. It was not in any way a burden, or a chore, or a nuisance. She didn't take advantage of the situation to make a humiliating "here comes the airplane" joke. She just carefully fed me and saw to my needs. I know in her heart she had felt rather useless because all my fear and anxiety was pent up inside. She loved having some way to show that she was there for me in a weak and frankly scary moment of my life. She is much better than I deserve and I am so crazy in love with her. Edit. My first gold ever. My beautiful wife gets the credit. Thank you. Edit 2. Platinum 2. Whoa. Thank you. Edit 3. Oh. And just for the record, it would have been cool with me if she made a silly joke while feeding me. We have a silly, playful relationship. She's my best friend, so it would have been cool. My wife and I came to understand that we can sleep apart for the sake of comfort and good rest, without it being an expression of emotional distance. And she took out a maggot that had burrowed under my skin. She has insect phobia. Knew she was a keeper. We both got viscous food poisoning from Chipotle. We both had diarrhea and we were both vomiting for about 10 hours straight. We had one bathroom. It was a damn nightmare. I won't go too much into details because it was ducking gross, but the fact we still wanted to have sex with each other once we recovered was a really good sign. When I was in labor with our third baby, I had to it, like so bad. The nurses were wanting to check me and make sure the baby wasn't crowning. I knew it was legitimately just needing to poop. It wasn't my first rodeo, obviously. The nurse told me I could go poop on the condition that husband had to accompany me in case the baby really did try to make an appearance. My poor husband sat in the hospital bathroom with me while I ate and held my hand through contractions as I pooped. I felt closer to him after that than I ever had before. It was an unbelievably intense 15 minutes and I've never been so vulnerable in front of him. We look back now and laugh about it. Married almost 7 years. My potty time didn't scare him off. 4 months into dating my husband. Boyfriend at the time obviously. He had to take me to my colonoscopy. I didn't have any family in town and it just made sense for him to take me. Afterwards I laid in his bed while he tried to convince me to pass gas so I wouldn't be in pain. He started farting to try to make me feel better lol. A few hours after resting, I had to go to the obgyn to get my IUD in. So he had to take care of me all day from being sore in my nether regions. To top it off, it was his birthday. It was the single most selfless thing anyone has ever done for me. When your wife has a tough pregnancy, she sometimes needs help with basic human processes which are normally quite private things. June of 2017, I had an accident that resulted in my left index being amputated at the first knuckle and limited use of my left thumb. It was a hard time for me and for my girlfriend. I was unemployed for 4 months. I had just bought a brand new car and we had just brought home a new kitten the week before as well. When it happened, she worked through her anxiety and depression to be my rock in my time of need. She helped me more than I will ever be able to thank her for. And she still does. I'm reminded constantly of the struggles we went through, and I'm thankful for the amount she's done for me, even if she doesn't realize just how much she did. If she finds this, I love you, Tony. Nursing my late husband through squamous cell carcinoma and thyroid cancer. Diagnosed end of November. Went into hospice, at home, end of February. Died the 21st of March. I took time off work most days just to be with him and feed him and give him his meds. I had to convince him that he wouldn't become addicted to morphine since he was actually in hospice, so he finally started taking it every time I offered it. My mom, an RN and cancer research nurse for 52 years, couldn't believe how much I stepped up and took over my husband's care. He is the love of my life. All I can do for him is make him comfortable, so that was my priority. I am going to do everything in my power to make him comfortable through the end of a ducking asshole of a disease. He died at home, but we had been able to say I love you, thank you, and goodbye. I miss him every day even 4 years later. Definitely pranking each other thoroughly. I spent a little more than a year randomly sending him emails from a man named Nolan. He works in customer service and I made the most ridiculous case for him to solve involving a balloon business. Once in a while, during a slow time at my job, good old Nolan would email him. Last message was about Nolan asking the hubs to join him in a doomsday bunker. I finally decided to tell him the truth on our anniversary, which is on the 1st of April. He got me back this Christmas. He anonymously sent me a super low rent Chevy Chase coloring book. I greatly dislike Chevy Chase. To put it mildly, he enjoyed me plotting revenge against my friends, and even egged me on. He finally admitted the truth on New Year's Eve. I plan to retaliate in the near future. Edit. Thank you, mysterious redditor, for the platinum. Edit 2. Thank you for the silver. 2. I'm flattered. I got too drunk one night and puked shortly after arriving home with my BF. Didn't make it to the toilet in time, so I puked in the hallway. My BF cleaned it up while I continued puking in the toilet, undressed me, filled the bath up with like 2 inches of warm water, and helped me lay down in the bathtub. Then he washed my hair since it had vomit in it. The whole time I'm crying and apologizing and he just continues to take care of me. Then he said he was going to go get me clean clothes and I sobbed, "Don't leave me, I'm going to drown." So he dried me off, carried me to our bedroom, dressed me, got me water and crackers, and still had sex with me when I felt better. My first child was a stillborn, holding my wife while we both bawled our eyes out as she vomited on me and bled all over the bathroom floor. It's a memory that will stick with me forever. She was so sick that she was laying on the floor eating herself and puking on herself. I carried her to the bathroom and bathed her, then put her to bed. I then cleaned up the mess. During her first pregnancy, my wife vomited brown, congealed blood every night for her entire second trimester. We went to multiple doctors and took a few trips to the ER. Never got a reason why. The vomiting happened every night after midnight, sometimes continuing sporadically for 8 hours. Don't know why, but it never happened during the daytime. One night, she thought she was finally doing better, so she went to sleep early and seemed fine. Then suddenly around 1 AM, she jolted awake, which instantly woke me, and tried to run to the bathroom to puke, forgetting the puke bucket on her bedside table in her moment of panic. Unfortunately, she slipped and fell on her side, nothing hit her belly, and puked blood all over the carpet. She immediately started sobbing. That poor woman went through such a rough time, so I carefully picked her up, took her to the bathroom, held her hair back while she finished throwing up, then cleaned her face and got her some water to rinse her mouth out. I carried her to bed and then got to work cleaning up the carpet. We were just kids, still in college together. Those 3 months of misery galvanized our relationship. Nothing serious has ever come between us in the years since. Edit. Just wanted to add. Another great side effect of constantly seeing disgusting fluids erupt out of my wife is that we're both completely comfortable around each other's bodily functions. None of this I don't want my husband to know I poop nonsense. Been having a tough 2 weeks that causes my anxiety to get high, which in turn causes me to become depressive and fold into myself, which my husband recognizes as me trying to freeze everything out until I inevitably explode and have a nervous breakdown. The last 2 weeks he's left me alone, stepped in to help more with the kids, and redirecting them so they also leave me alone. Now that I'm more or less better, the things that were stressing me out are resolving, and did not have a nervous breakdown. I went and cuddled with him last night and thanked him for giving me space, because he knew I really needed it. Also, he let me wax his taint once. Edited to add, oh gosh. Thank you for the gold. Kind person. I'm glad I could make you laugh. The actual story of the taint waxing is in my comment history, but you've been warned. My boyfriend made me go to the gynecologist to talk about getting an ablation after watching me struggle from crippling pain and bleeding every month for years. He said not to worry about money or anything else besides solving my problem. Fast forward 2 months and I got a call from my surgeon. Apparently I missed the fact that they did a biopsy when they removed my polyps and found uterine cancer. Had I been stubborn and continued to ignore my miserable periods for years, who knows what could have happened to me. No one expects uterine cancer in someone under 30. He held me while I cried, took me to every appointment, and helped me when I recovered after my hysterectomy. That dude is my rock. I'm prone to developing cysts. Mostly they just hang out, and sometimes go away on their own, but every once in a while one will get infected randomly. I had one such cyst on the back of my neck a few years ago. It was so painful, and I was in agony. One day, it just burst open on its own. I won't go into detail, but suffice it to say, it was really disgusting. My husband is very squeamish about these kinds of things, but without hesitation, he very lovingly made sure that all of the infectious material was purged, cleaned out the crater it left in its wake, and put antibiotic cream on it. He religiously checked and cleaned the wound twice a day until it healed, and would put clean bandages on it as needed. I don't even mind the scar it left, because it reminds me of his TLC, even though I'm 100% sure it grossed him out. When we'd been married about 10 years, 2 little kids, jobs not paying enough to cover daycare and bills, and were having the sort of fight that these stresses can precipitate. It was a nasty one. We were not holding back with unkind things said to each other, and then the phone rang. My dad was in the hospital 1,200 miles away. He'd had a stroke. Docs were unsure whether he'd live. The fight stopped and she told me to get in the car and go to the airport. She'd have tickets waiting for me at the counter. She'd call my boss and explain that I was flying across the country, take how much time I needed. She would take care of the house and the kids and to not worry about anything but taking care of my family. Dad made it a few years after that, but now I know that no matter how hard life gets, and however much 2 volatile pig-headed jerks fight and yell, she isn't just on my team, she is my team. We'll be married 30 years this year. Life happens, And sometimes people aren't perfect. But when the world is against me, that little woman will grab my arm and we'll roar together. And nothing will break us. To all those sharing their stories, thank you. I expected some funny stories, and instead I've read absolutely touching instances of love. So, again, thank you. My husband and I often end up showering together, and one night as he was about to get in he said, "Never mind, I'll clean up and get some food ready for you and let you shave your asshole in peace." We were actually on a romantic getaway weekend in the mountains. I was still breastfeeding at the time. Right as we were getting ready for dinner I had to break it to him that I had a plug duct and it was threatening to ruin our whole night, not the whole weekend. I was very uncomfortable and I was worried about getting mastitis. My man went to town on that boob and sucked the plug out. I can't describe how awkward it is to breastfeed your own husband, but he had absolutely no qualms about helping me out. The last few years before my mother passed away, she had horrible diarrhea and had lost most of her mobility, so it was not uncommon for her to be unable to make it out of the bed, much less to the bathroom. Every time this would happen, my old man would get up, get her to the bathroom and cleaned up, then go back into the bedroom, pull the sheets off their bed, put them in the wash, and finish off with putting fresh clean sheets down. Oh, and he wasn't in much better health himself, but he never complained. My so puked in the parking lot on our first date. Before we even got into the restaurant, I thought she was having second thoughts because she just got out of a horrible relationship. Nope. She was on her period and it was bad enough where she would puke. We're married now. We spend the majority of our time at home doing our own separate things. We have 2 TVs in our living room, so I'll often be playing video games or watching podcasts while she watches Netflix or YouTube. We also spend a lot of time in our own separate study rooms where mine is for making music and hers is for getting her career work done. I believe respecting each other needs to do things alone and not always needing to do things together every day is the single biggest reason we've lasted as long as we have, and we just celebrated our 13-year anniversary. I fainted in the shower, hit my head and was knocked unconscious. My husband called the ambulance because I was naked when I fainted. New husband dressed me while I was unconscious before the paramedics arrived. My boyfriend texted me one day when he was at the gym that he believed his rectum had prolapsed. No idea how, but I started googling what we needed to do about it. I read that if it wasn't serious, you could just push it back in before going to a doctor, instead of heading to the ER. So what do? Put on a pair of gloves, lube my finger up, and kneel in front of him while he's lying on the bed attempting to push part of his rectum back into his anus. Turns out it was just a giant ducking hemorrhoid when he went to the doctors the next day. But I think that was a moment in our relationship where it was established that we both had complete comfort with each other. If your partner can try and shove part of your rectum up into your ass, then nothing is really too disgusting or gross to discuss.